Hey everyone, it's Sean here. I hope you're enjoying your day. Today we're going to be taking a look at dividends.
The dividends would be greater.
More specifically, we're going to take a closer look at dividend ETFs, short for exchange traded funds. Now, if you're like me, you like to earn income from your investments, and that's what these 7 best dividend ETFs of 2022 are going to provide for you. As we look at these 7 dividend ETFs that we are going to mention, I want you to know that you will probably not see as much growth in the stocks or ETFs that we're going to talk about as you might otherwise, but that's not really the purpose of dividend ETFs.
Dividend?
Money.
I'll reiterate that again, growth is really not the goal of dividend ETFs, but you don't want to sacrifice ETF price losing its value only to make those monthly or quarterly dividend payments.
Dividend.
The goal would be that the dividend ETF maintains or experiences some growth as it pays out income.
Earned income.
Now, as always, this is not investment advice, so make sure you're doing your own research.
Some research.
Before I get into the list, I'll just quickly share what we will discuss with each of these dividend ETFs. I will be sharing the main objective and what the ETF tracks, how many holdings are included, the top 5 holdings, its dividend yield, which is the percentage relation between the stock's current price and the dividend currently paid, and the expense ratio, which is how much of a fund's assets are used towards administrative and other operating expenses. First on our list is the Invesco KBW High Dividend Yield Financial ETF, ticker symbol KBWD. Now, this fund is based on the KBW Nasdaq Financial Sector Dividend Yield Index. The fund generally will invest at least 90% of its total assets in the securities of publicly listed financial companies with competitive dividend yields in the US and that comprise the index. It is comprised of 42 total holdings, and here are the top 5 companies with the highest percentage of ownership that make up this fund. The dividend yield is 9.08%, and the expense ratio comes in at 2.59%, which is absolutely on the high end when it comes to expense ratios. So in other words, you would get a very nice dividend payout but sacrifice a rather high expense ratio. Coming in at number 2 on this list is the Invesco High Yield Equity Dividend Achievers ETF, ticker symbol PEY. It is based on the Nasdaq US Dividend Achievers 50 Index. Now, the fund will normally invest at least 90% of its total assets in dividend-paying common stocks that comprise the index. This fund is comprised of 52 holdings, meaning that there are 52 companies that make up this fund. As I'll do with each of these funds on the list, take a look at the top 5 companies and their portfolio makeup. The dividend yield is 3.92% and the expense ratio is 0.53%. So if you're paying attention to those last 2 percentages, you will notice that we have come down quite drastically from the first dividend ETF I mentioned. Third on the list is the ALPS Sector Dividend Dogs ETF, ticker symbol SDOG. This fund seeks investment results that replicate as closely as possible the performance of the S-Network Sector Dividend Dogs Index. It provides high dividend exposure by selecting the 5 highest yielding securities in 10 of the 11 sectors, excluding the real estate sector. If you weren't sure, there are 11 sectors that make up the stock market. With that said, you just take 5 times 10 since we aren't counting the real estate sector. There are 50 holdings, with the top 5 holdings carrying very equal weight in the fund, just over 2% each. The dividend yield was currently not available at the time of this recording, but the expense ratio is 0.40%. The expense ratio does continue to fall as we move further down this list, and just a reminder, that is the percentage of fees you pay throughout the year when owning these funds. Fourth, let's talk about iShares Core High Dividend ETF, ticker symbol HDV. This fund seeks exposure to established high-quality US companies. The iShares Core High Dividend ETF seeks to track the investment results of an index composed of relatively high dividend-paying US equities. It consists of 75 dividend-paying domestic stocks that have been screened for financial health. The top 5 companies that are part of this fund will probably be more familiar than the ones we've mentioned so far. Finishing out this fund, the dividend yield is 3.40% and the expense ratio is a mere 0.08%. Fifth on our list is the VictoryShares US Small Cap High Dividend Volatility Weighted ETF, ticker symbol CSB. This fund offers exposure to small cap dividend yielding US stocks. It tracks the performance of the NASDAQ Victory US Small Cap High Dividend 100 Volatility Weighted Index. It actually consists of 100 stocks with the top 5 consisting of companies that you're probably not familiar with. Reason being is that you are dealing with smaller companies and not the massive tech companies you might experience with mid to large cap funds. The dividend yield is approximately 3.22% and the expense ratio is 0.42%. Coming in at number 6 is Invesco S&P 500 High Dividend Low Volatility ETF, ticker symbol SPHD. This fund is based on the S&P 500 Low Volatility High Dividend Index. The fund will invest at least 90% of its total assets in common stocks that comprise the index. This fund consists of 52 stocks, and I'm sure given that it has all S&P 500 companies in this fund, you'll recognize some of the top 5 in it. The dividend yield is approximately 3.75% with an expense ratio of 0.30%. One thing I personally like about this fund is that it does pay out a monthly dividend. So instead of a quarterly payout or 4 times a year, you will get 12 payouts, 1 for each month. Finally, last but certainly not least on our list is the Vanguard High Dividend Yield Index Fund ETF, ticker symbol VYM. The fund seeks to track the performance of the FTSE High Dividend Yield Index, which measures the investment return of common stocks of companies characterized by, you guessed it, high dividend yields. There are actually 410 stocks that make up this fund, and you will definitely be familiar with the top 5. The dividend yield is 2.75% and the expense ratio is a mere 0.06%, the lowest that we've mentioned. That means for every $10,000 invested, you would pay as little as $6 a year. And if you were wondering or wanted to do the math for the other expense ratios, just ask in the comments and I can calculate them for you. We just covered a lot, I know, so now just take some time to go back through the video. I'll leave chapters in the description for you to do your own research on these 7 dividend ETFs for 2022. Once again, these are all ETFs that you can literally buy on any exchange to give you the income that you may be looking for in your investment portfolio. And one other thing to note, when it comes to dividend ETF investing, understand this. Dividends and the price of a stock work inversely. When one goes up, generally speaking, the other one goes down. It's going to be nearly impossible to find you a dividend ETF or stock that gives you 10% dividend yield as well as a 10% growth consistently. So definitely keep that in mind. Lastly, don't forget to check out our other Money Made Simple videos. We've been working hard to provide a nice variety of different money related topics. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.